Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where true health is wealth. So I'm just going to ask you to make sure that you share, invite your friends to be a part of this great conversation. Remember that this conversation is for informational purposes only, and this is where we talk about health is wealth. We want to make sure that we are saying hello to all of our listeners who are here, to our Facebook family, Instagram, Periscope, and all of our social media families. What night is tonight? It is Monday night, and Monday night is Couch Conversations with the Doctors. As always, we're going to go around the panel really quickly and introduce everyone that's here. I'm going to start off with the man who says that I threatened him to be here, but that's our very own Dr. James Miller. Dr. Miller? Dr. Miller? So I think Dr. Miller is having some technical difficulties. He's
Good
going to
evening,
continue to work.
everybody.
There you go.
Good evening. We're glad to be available. And yes, you can't hear me?
Yes, now we do.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm so glad to be here this evening. Thanks to Congressman Davis for this format. And I'm a retired with health, education, and things of that nature. So we're glad to be on board tonight.
Well, wonderful, Dr. Miller. Thank you so very much. I'm going to go right over to that infectious disease specialist, our very own Dr. Pete Thomas. Dr. Pete?
Hey guys, good afternoon. I'm happy to be here, answer so many questions that the community has. I'm the Director of Medical Support Services at Near North, and just happy to be with my colleagues.
All right, wonderful. To my co-worker, our very own Dr. Douglas Graham, who left us to go be in Sun and Fun, but he has great gifts that he's bringing back to us. Dr. Graham?
Hey, I'm just getting my vitamin D the way Dr. Hampton recommends. That's all. Anyway, I'm also a retired physician. I worked in Chicago area for about 30 years. Last year, I joined Representative Dixon's office as a congressional fellow. I'll answer questions if I can.
Let me just ask, I think somebody may be unmuted and are not engaged in this conversation. And if you are, it would be very helpful to us if you would mute yourself and then come in. But right now, you're hurting us.
All right. I see that family medicine doctor there who also works in infectious disease and is an HIV specialist. That's Dr. Maya Green.
Hello, Nikki, Congressman, and fellow colleagues. Thank you for having me. I'm Dr. Maya, Community Medicine Doc, always keeping it 100. So glad to be here and learn from you all and learn from the community. Hello to everybody out there.
So I want to say hey to Martha. I see Martha has stopped in and she says good evening all. To Nellie King, who says good evening. To Kay Rita, who says good evening to everyone. Thank you for being here with us on this evening. This is going to be a power-packed hour full of health. Oh, is that who I see? Do I see that family medicine guru, that weight loss specialist that's here on the line, our very own Dr. Tony Hampton?
And you do, and thank you for the kind words. I just want to say that I'm happy to be here. I work for Advocate Healthcare on the South Side. I've seen successes with lifestyle changes in my family. I've seen it in my clinic. I've seen it on social media, and now it's your turn to take advantage of all the lifestyle changes that will change your life. So I hope the things we share tonight will bless you with information and guidance, and we want to coach you to good health. So I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Linda Johnson says good evening to everyone. I see a great friend here. However, I'm going to leave that introduction to our very own congressman, the one who teaches us that health is wealth, the one who is a vanguard on healthcare, our very own congressman of the Illinois 7th Congressional District, Congressman Danny K. Davis.
Well, again, it's a Monday evening, and I want to thank all of our participants for being engaged, involved, and a part of what we hope will be an informative discussion. I had a tremendous weekend. As a matter of fact, going to work every day is getting better and better every day. Tomorrow, we're going to start, well, we actually started the process today of giving away $28.6 billion to restaurant owners who've been hurting. We're going to be in Chinatown tomorrow. We'll have a press conference at one of the restaurants with the business association there and the Chamber of Commerce. Sunday, I was out next door to Freedom Church in Hillside. We had a tremendous gathering of individuals at the MedStar Laboratories that are just next door to Freedom Baptist Church because we had a group of our ethnic friends and people from all walks of life who were drumming up support for India. That is, there's a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous crisis in India with the pandemic. And I've got a lot of Indian friends who are physicians. Some of them are other things as well. But a number of them, as a matter of fact, are physicians. And jointly, we decided that we needed to do something specific as it related to India. And so we have one group there with us who've already generated $8 million that they have sent and raised. Their goal is to raise 20, and I suspect they're going to do that. And I was shocked because the people who were at this little gathering we had came up with $20,000, and I didn't expect that to be happening. These were grassroots community folks. They kicked in 20,000 and sent it off for ventilators and oxygen and whatever it is that will, come as a result. I was counting up a little bit because Mother's Day is coming up on next Sunday, and we've got this great Mother's Day extravaganza where we are encouraging people to put on their new hats and good looking dresses and come on out to COMED where we're going to be shooting them in the arm if they will come. We've got all kind of radio personalities and gospel singers and preachers and all of those people. They can just drive in. They can have their Louis Vuitton purses, and we got gifts for them, and Walgreens and Kmart's and CVS's and the whole works. It's a great way to celebrate Mother's Day by making sure. We also kind of added up and we discovered that we had passed out over 50,000 face masks since the pandemic started. And we've managed to get those in people's hands. People gave them to us. And so we said, yeah, you give them to us, we'll get them out. Willie Wilson must have given us about 20,000 during that period of time. And if he didn't, we've been with him all over the county passing out masks, drive-through face masks, come whatever. There are still people, though, who have not gotten vaccinated. There's still reluctance on the part of some people to do it. And so we've still got a selling job to do. We've got to keep trying to convince people that you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. We don't want them to be any of that. But things are really going well. I mean, there's movement, there is hope, there's possibility. There are people who believe that we can overcome, and I think we will. We got some good leadership up there in the White House, and they're doing some good stuff out of there. We got a governor who don't mind trying to hustle up everything he can get for the state of Illinois. And so things are moving. We do have a special guest, and I am delighted that Dr. David Ansel agreed to share with us and be a part of this discussion. Of course, he's worked everywhere. He comes from New York. How he got to Chicago from New York, we'll take it. You know, if you want to leave the Big Apple and come on to a great place like Chicago and live. Terry Mason, doctor, how are you? We're glad you're in. And but Dr. Ansel has a very interesting way of doing things. Not only has he done the practice itself in terms of being a practitioner, he's been in the public sector, Cook County Hospital. You can't get much up than that. But of course, private, less public sector. He's been a part of that. He's a writer. He's an author. He's a scholar. He's a researcher. He's a community activist right on the ground. And he's the spearhead behind something called West Side United. And so I would ask him if he would tell us a little bit about that. And we got a bunch of questions, and our viewers and listeners do too. Welcome, Dr. Ansel, and thank you so much for being with us. Now, if you just unmute and go right ahead.
Can you hear me now? When
Yes, sir.
Davis calls you and says, show up Monday night at 7 p.m., you better show up Monday night at 7 p.m. And I said, but I'm actually pleased to be on the phone with a group of old friends and new colleagues. And Dr. Hampton, I know of your great work. And every patient visit I tell my patients, you are what you eat. And Dr. James Miller, how did you retire? We started at the same time. You're too young to retire. Dr. Pete, it's so great to see you again. My friend Terry Mason, and Dr. Maya, nice to see you. Dr. Graham, yeah, you know I've been around, not as long as some people on this call, but I've been around a long time. And you know, it was at Cook County, then Mount Sinai. I came to Rush as the chief medical officer with the goal of Rush becoming #1 in quality, which we did. But then I realized, and Terry Mason and I have had these conversations many times, that people were dying outside our doors, and we had it all wrong. And so Led says, Ed, how do we really need to understand that this is just not about the boxes, you know, that we operate in? Yes, people need to have access to great healthcare, but it's about the conditions under which people are living and working and playing that make a difference to who lives and who dies, and then what they do in those things. So I went to our CEO, Larry Goodman, and said, I quit being chief medical officer. We went to our board and said the same thing. You know, we could be #1, but it's not making a difference on what's really causing people to be harmed. And for the first time in Russia's 180-year history, we named root causes, because if you don't name the root cause of why something's wrong, you can never solve the problem. So we named that structural racism and economic deprivation were root cause. I didn't want to use the word poverty. So I said, it's got to be an act of, it has to be an affliction. So economic deprivation, I thought I was being really smart. Martin Luther King said that back in 1966 when he was in Chicago. and noted the same thing. But I think what happened as a result said, how do we begin to address the social and structural determinants of health, like economic vitality, like educational, like eating food, like housing? And how can a hospital like Rush begin to do that intentionally? And we took on what's called an anchor mission to hire locally, purchase locally, invest locally, but also create career pathways for our own employees who could come in at an entry-level job and retire 30 years later poor. That was never our intention. How do we begin to think about changing it? And so I gave up that part of my career of quality and safety, but using some of the same ideas behind it, began to look at can a place like Rush affect community development and the outcomes at the neighborhood level. But then we realized one hospital couldn't do it. So we gathered 6 hospitals, partnered with the community, and did listening tours on the West Side. And said, what do you want? But they didn't want more doctors' offices. What they wanted was good paying jobs. We want you to support our local businesses. Our children are feeling hopeless. There's no good place to get food around here. It was those conditions. And so we created West Side United to address the life expectancy gap. This was 2016. The gap between the Loop and the West Side, up to 25 years. And we showed it to our board and said, shame on us if we don't do something different. And so that became West Side United as a racial health equity collaborative where the power and decision-making is shared with the community. And so that's what we did. And it turns out that this model of healthcare in partnership with community anchors, including the ministers and including the community-based organizations, and a partnership with government is the only way we can begin to crack this. And it gets down to the kinds of things that Dr. Tony Hampton teaches, and Terry Mason, but if we don't address the stress of what people are under and change the conditions, I say poverty itself is not the worst thing in the world, but misery is. And as long as we have to be anti-misery and after the condition, anti the conditions that cause misery. So long-winded, Mr. Davis, but that's how I got here. And it's the most satisfying work of a whole career of really doing this. We're trying to, in Garfield Park, there's a wellness collaborative, and it's an amazing approach led by community leaders in which a place like Rush and other hospitals are sitting around the table basically saying, you tell us what to do and we do it. So it's fantastic. Thank you, Congressman and colleagues.
I think you've opened the door, and I would imagine that there are probably questions that people already have. So I guess we'll just say the door is open. Whatever comments, questions, reactions any of us have, let's go ahead and start.
I'll start us off with a really, elephant in the room comment and question. I know most health systems have to follow. For those, who haven't heard terms like HEDIS measures, that's a HEDIS, and those are things like, how effective is the care? And it speaks to what, we try to teach, which is get to the root cause, is about nutrition, wellness. So I think that's the, how effective the care is. Now, the current system focuses on, did you get the diabetes test? Did you get your eye exam? Did you take your statin? And that's not really, that's important, but it's not going to get to the root cause, right? So I think part of it is what we're measuring has to be thought about. We talk about access to care, even the patient experience is important. So I guess what I'm curious about as you've done this work, my struggle is how do you shift large health systems like Advocate Aurora, Rush, University of Chicago, Northwestern to a model where we focus on wellness as the primary vehicle. In other words, if you have, I think about how I teach low carb and keto, right? And why don't the neurologists consider a diet? We know that the keto diet helps with epilepsy, but yet they never make that part of the conversation as a primary starting point. Instead, we just run to medicine. or if we have a kid struggling with. So I guess my point is we have to change the paradigm. So as you've done your work, have you seen the needle move where people are starting, our traditional, conventionally trained docs? Are they, the endocrinologist who treats with medicine and the cardiologist who, they have this different paradigm, which is heavy on medicine, heavy on procedures, heavy on, and it's like, if we change the lifestyle, we'll have a tremendous impact, but yet the system doesn't seem to get that message. And I'm not that smart, but it seems obvious to me. So what's been your experience with that?
Yeah, I really appreciate what you just said, Dr. Hampton, because, here I was, chief medical officer, we're number one, right? But in quality, and saying, well, it's all wrong. It's wrong. And I started about those L tracks I just described with a 25-year life expectancy, when you get to one census tract, literally within 7 miles. And I thought, as a doctor, if I gave everybody a statin along those L tracks who needed one, what would that do to life expectancy? And would add about 20 minutes to life expectancy. But what if we addressed what was really going on, named it at the highest level, then named it at the secondary level, and then really understood what to do? So in a sense was, I left the beautiful island because I knew it was all wrong, but the payment system, so there was no better demonstration of how flawed the financing and organized system of healthcare in the United States was than COVID-19. And it just exposed something that we've known, that it's all upside down. And I will just say another part of it that really struck me is that it's not only upside down, it's racialized on top of it. Here's what I mean by this, is the whole financing system rewards procedures that are done with people with good insurance cards. And that layers down in this country by, unfortunately, not the only way, but by race or by income. And so in those communities that need like the preventive services the most, you've got the organization, the institution barely being able to stay alive. So I do think we're going to have to, I think Biden has done some pretty tremendous things, I have to say. And Danny, you just mentioned it. I mean, just have a president in the White House, but we have to actually do even more fundamental things. Why I'm a big fan of Medicare for all, not because it's a perfect system, at least it levels what cards people have. But then we've got to do the shift that you said. And that shift is to really preventive care and care in the community, and not just care in offices. It's got to be, we have to, it's a new paradigm. And we need our organizations to move over. Unfortunately, right now, the reward system rewards the wrong things. I think if we can switch the reward system, we'll get people to change. But I'd be interested in your point of view on that, because food is medicine in the end.
Yeah, well, with my colleagues, certainly I'm sure they got strong opinions. I think for me, I think it basically speaks to what you said. In other words, if I have done a great job to, I literally posted on Twitter a hemoglobin A1C of 11.1 that within 4 months went down to 4.4. For those who don't know, that's the diabetes test. No medicine changes. They just changed their diet. It went from 11 to 4. Now, how much money does that person save personally? How much does our health system change? However, if I don't have this person on a statin, not only I'll get dinged as a clinician. In other words, doc, I think that person still, so my point is, if we incentivize success, I should get a check because they did that. I'm not trying to be sarcastic. That should be the reward. Oh my God, you've helped reverse or put into remission, if you want to call it that, their medical condition. So I think that the incentives are the key. We need to reward success, transition towards that model. Every year, our health system will decide which metric to focus on. And those metrics need to start pushing towards those things that are realistic, that deal with us coaching our patients to changes that'll. So I think that's that's the way I see it. And I think that if we reward that, just like you've articulated, I think that things will change. My clinicians follow guidelines. They follow what they're perceiving as evidence-based medicine. And if the evidence says you follow these, you do these things that are going to help, that are lifestyle, which we have plenty of evidence for, then I think the colleagues will follow. But if you don't incentivize them that way, they will not do it, because we only have so much time to do our job and so many things we can focus on. So, and then we have to create a system that supports that. So if we have people that need to lose weight, we need to have weight management programs that are not based on bariatric surgery, but it should include that. But it also has programs where we have coaching and we teach nutrition and we follow people and we know what to measure and we do research at great institutions like yours and where I work, so that we can kind of create more data. But I think we have to incentivize, and then we create programs, because if you discover there's no access to care, or you discover all these things and you don't have anything you can do with it, if you see a traumatic experience for a person they've just experienced, and you don't have a trauma, group within your organization to deal with it, then what are you going to do with that information? So I think that we have to really think, to start creating these programs, and then the insurers and our colleague, the congressman, have to create incentives that will allow people to be rewarded at those levels. But if the insurer is only concerned about hemoglobin A1Cs and these other things and not concerned about lifestyle, it won't change. So we have to really go all the way to the top and then come back down.
I would add one other thing is, I don't know what you learned in medical school, but this was I learned at County and Sinai and Rush, and everything that you said is true, but the skill sets aren't there, and why most doctors can't or don't do this is they don't understand it, and they don't understand how to prescribe food and as medicine. And so I think that's it. And of course, I want to say I was the oldest doctor on this call, but then I saw Dr. Mason, and I've learned a lot from Dr. Terry Mason about this. He's a urologist, he's a surgeon, and he came to this pretty early on too. And Terry, I bet you have something to say about this, right? You're on mute, man. You're still on mute.
Dr. Mason,
There you are.
He doesn't listen to me. There you go.
No, I got it. Should be better now. I was pressing the wrong one. I was just sitting here, and David, you're right. You're absolutely right. You and I have known each other for a long time, and over that has been built a bridge of integrity and honesty and friendship. And one of the things I have to say is the reason I left the practice of urology after being a urologist for 26 years, because I no longer believed in what I was doing.
Yeah.
I couldn't any longer do it. I couldn't, in right conscience, tell men that, yes, there are times when surgical procedures are necessary, and absolutely with stones and obstruction and things of that nature. But when we started looking at the evidence around prostate cancer, and we started looking at the relationship to some of the foods, and as I learned later, that this is all about food.
Yeah.
It's all about food. And I'm not saying only, I just said a lot of it is. And that the problem is there is no value proposition. I think, to put what Tony said in a different sort of way, there's no value proposition for health. There's no money in making people healthy. There's only money in managing their complication. And physicians in medical school are taught how to be arbiters of medications and surgery. That's our job. That's what we learned. I was at U of I in medical school. We have 40 minutes of nutrition in 4 years of medical school, and it was only about deficiency diseases, scurvy, beriberi, that kind of stuff that, we saw maybe varying degrees of it and didn't realize it. But David, until there is a value proposition. One of the movies I was fortunate enough to be in, I made the comment that the United States government is complicit in the leading causes of death in America.
From the food industry.
And the food industry, and especially the food industry. Because if we wanted to, we could make high quality, pesticide free food available at a cheap price yesterday if we wanted to do that. Why? Because we right now are subsidizing and encouraging the production of these other foods that we know are synthetic and are creating an inflammatory response to which our bodies react in with diseases called hypertension, diabetes, cancer, and so on and so forth. So to me, I couldn't do it anymore, David. I just could not do it. And I will not do it. And I left and went on into the public health arena to try to see if we could do it. I asked the mayor of the city of Chicago if I could ask everybody in the city to not eat meat for the first 5 days of the year. And he said yes, and we did. And that's how we birthed the Restart program. So you're right, David. And I don't think that we're going to, I would love to see it in my lifetime, but I don't believe we will. We're going to keep doing what we do to get us back to where a lot of the people already in the world are, and that is eating far more fruits and vegetables, and it's other things too. Not much, all these synthetic things, all of this manufactured stuff, all of these manufactured artificial foods that are really killing us.
Well, let me ask this. I mean, I don't expect to experience utopia. I don't expect, I'm saying when we look at capitalism, what we've learned, how we are, how we behave. But there are other countries, and you mentioned, that are doing better in certain areas than we are. Now, nobody is supposed to be smarter than we are. Nobody is wealthier than we are. Nobody in the world is as sophisticated as we are. Why are they doing better than we're doing in terms of health outcomes?
Congressman, there is a book. I used to be a teacher with CPS before I became a physician, and then I became a physician, which doctor means teacher. So still doing that, There's a book called "The Smartest Kids in the World and How They Got That Way," and it essentially talks about it's talking about children, but it's relative to adults because we all are our smaller, younger selves, just wrapped up in all the ways we've been socialized or desocialized, whatever you want to call it, up until now. Essentially, is what's going on. So the meat of it is a lot of other countries on critical thinking, on progressive things, actually have done different, and by wellness standards, maybe healthier. Internally, we tell ourselves that we're great. We tell ourselves that we're, and not to say we're not great, right? Look at different cultures who have survived in this country, not, despite the things that are done. But the bottom line is, if a system is not built by those who bear the brunt of the problems, we're going to always come out like that. And that's part of the kind of psychopathology of America, right? It happened, Dr. Ansel, you mentioned in COVID. It happens in diabetes. It happens over and over again. It happens with this statin, right? So I guarantee you, the people that they're saying need the statin most were not at the table when it was decided that they needed the statin, right? And so putting the statin, Dr. Ansel, like you mentioned, putting the statin for everybody on that loop is an example of this equality that we're looking for, right? Equality means everybody has a seat at the table, but we have to understand that table wasn't built for us. It's serving food that don't serve our bodies. It's giving medicine that don't help us. So like you're saying, we have to overturn the table. Yeah. For those that read the Bible, it's in there, overturn the table. Yeah. Right. Now, next, it's the difference between being good and looking good, right? So if I make all my measures as a provider, as an organization, I look good.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I be, and yes, Ebonics, but actually English, B to B, That doesn't mean I'm being good to my patients. That doesn't mean I'm being good to my community. It means I'm looking good to, guess who? Those same people that made all these rules.
Yeah.
So.
And just to add, if you look at this, and I talk to my patients, like, who was the food tested on?
Yeah.
You know, if you look at how the food was created and how it was tested, and it's addictive, you know, and so it's very hard to break. You can do it, and Tony Hampton's work is terrific, and the work that I know Terry, you got into, and I've gotten into, my practice is all about what you eat. I mean, that's my evolve. I'm like old doctor doing this, but if you look at how food was tested, who it was tested on, and how unregulated it is. So I think that's the place to what, you go to other countries, there's more access to local markets and fresh food, and the things are more distributed. We've allowed this to become one of our, like pharma. It's very similar. The food and pharma are very, very similar giant businesses that have taken out, I like you just said, Dr. Maya, like the table was set, but it wasn't set for the people. So I think there's probably public policies that could be put in place to regulate it, but they're very unpopular because they regulated the point of the consumer, like sugar taxes. We saw that once in the county, but they actually have to be regulated at the producer. So imagine this: we get rid of plastic bags, right? That's a good thing for global warming and thing like that. But look at the size of the bags of chips and the pop that comes out and the calorie and people are addicted to this. Yeah. And we allow the industry to make it like that. And so we need to sort of figure out how to regulate this to some degree.
You know, David, we keep hurting ourselves and can't turn around. You know, like I'm listening to Joe Biden say, we're going to pay for all these good things that we're proposing, and we're only going to get additional money from people who make $400,000 a year or more, or corporations that don't pay no taxes.
Yeah, right, none of them.
And there are people who are opposed to that, but they don't make $400,000 a year, and they don't have any corporations.
Exactly.
So why should they care if this is the only group that's going to be paying for it? But
there's disproportionate influence, and you know this because you're a politician in America, and I doubt this is true in all the other countries, and I think there's corruption everywhere. Legal bribery is legal in the United States. So the corporations have an unfair advantage that they can write a check and say, could you please do it this way? If the people had a little bit more power and their $20 could influence people to run for office, getting money from people instead of corporations, then we can shift the tide. The current system, I don't think, allows for that approach. And because of that, and because one study I saw said 92% of decisions made in the world of politics are based on donors. So if the people with the money, that's why we have American Medical Associations. And I mean, I didn't even know that we have our own governmental person with an advocate of rural healthcare. And their only job is to go and be a lobbyist because that's the nature of this crazy country. It should be, if 72% of people, as Dr. David has suggested, 72% of Americans want universal health care. Why in the heck don't we have universal health care? That doesn't make sense. If the people want that and we elect people to represent us, why don't we have what the people want? So you can see the disconnect. That's because their voice does not have the impact that I'm just speaking politics, and that's not my job. I'm a doc. But what I'm saying is it should be obvious to anybody that when you're influenced by those dollars, it's going to affect your decision making. So until that changes, we will always be a country that spends all this money on healthcare, but it won't have the impact of changing lives. And until that changes, we will be chasing our tails, and we'll get a little crumbs every once in a while to make us feel, just to quiet us down. But we need to stand on the rooftop and start yelling until we do what's right by people.
You know, Dr. Hampton, I agree. I think what you're saying is that this is a social justice issue. And I mean, the root cause of everything that we're saying is all social justice. And there's some things that's just not right, and it's not fair. And there are communities that are underrepresented and get told what they're going to get. And I commend Dr. Ansel and all of your work, because it's recognizing our privilege and giving it back to say to the community, you should tell me what you need in your community. I shouldn't be telling you. That was the whole basis and the principle of Project Brotherhood that we did years ago in the county. It was all about having the men to determine what they needed and putting together that whole group of folks on the South Side. And so I think we need to do more pieces like that, but also incentivize those things. So it shouldn't have been this sort of small line item in the county's budget. I mean, it really should have been something that was more robust.
Yeah.
But we keep telling ourselves that change is possible.
It is.
And that change is inevitable. That change is coming. And that we just got to keep plugging away at it until we accept a little bit at a time and hope that we ultimately get there.
I'm actually an optimist about this and a bit of a utopian. So I like what Dr. Pete said. I mean, so first, you said a couple of things. Number one is listen to what the people say, because they will tell you honestly the truth, and then what they need. And our job, and it's nothing about us without us. And we really need to do that. And I know, when for those of us doctors on here, we talk to our patients, they will tell us that they're stressed, that there's trauma. And we need to think about it. It'd be really something to say, about really thinking about food as medicine broadly across our systems, right? Tony, you asked a question and I flip it back. Okay, why is it like this? Well, then I say, well, what more could we do as a community of docs, starting with a small group around these things, and really see how we could really push some of these things? Our head of cardiology here, Kim Williams. I don't know if folks know Dr. Williams.
We've had him here.
He's a vegan. And, every time you read one of his notes, and my notes are like this now, is, talking about plant-based diets and things like that. Imagine what we can do. We take an oath. So this is an interesting thing. Now Representative Davis took an oath too, an oath in the office, but we took an oath to the people. We took an oath to the people, but then we became subordinate to our institutions. I always tell people, I've been at Rush, I've been in county, I've been at Sinai, worked at Access Community Health. I'm institutionally agnostic, totally. But we took an oath to the people, and Dr. Pete is an oath about justice. And then shame on us if we don't get outside of our walls and come together around things, like the 3 or 4 things that we could get together around, and then use a little of young Danny Davis's organizing skills to make this change. So that's what happened, and we can do it. And I think that, but we should, it's what we actually should do as a group of doctors, and get other doctors on board and then train them how to do, Dr. Hampton, which you know how to do, and Dr. Mason knows how to do, Dr. Pete knows how to do, and Dr. Maya knows how to do. Really, because people have been poorly trained and ill-equipped to take on where the problems are. I would love to see something like that, and I think we could do it, and get all the organizations and begin to build, this
And I'll say this real quick. The good news is they just formed the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners this past year. And those members include doctors and nurses and pharmacists, and they all understand metabolic health. So we are starting to create, have tools, and then we can then partner with the American Diabetes Association, American Heart Association, obviously, health systems to create, and literally the training that's necessary to answer your question is there. We just have to kind of decide what that looks like and make sure that information, because then you're right. And you don't have to become board certified in obesity medicine like myself. You just need to know just enough to know if I understand this way of thinking, then now the same thing that helps with obesity helps with diabetes. The same thing that helps with the obesity and diabetes will help with polycystic ovarian syndrome. The same thing that helps with those things will help with, so many medical conditions, dementia, even cancer. And so they're still doing research. They're still share
what was their first experience of
maybe everybody should mute for a minute. Yeah. So what happens is, now that we understand all the medical conditions that are associated with these conditions, and fatty liver, things like that can easily be reversed. And then we teach the docs, the best way to get rid of fatty liver, there's no pill. You just got to get rid of the diet that's causing the fatty liver. And then all of a sudden that person doesn't have a higher risk for cirrhosis and liver, cancer down the road. So I think that you're right. We need to, kind of get health systems, and then, as you've done, then the health systems work with each other, and then we become a model that other people say they're almost jealous of it because it's working, and then they want to do it, and then all of a sudden you have a whole country of people that are interested in this approach. So I 100% agree that this is the foundation of how we can make change.
The other thing is setting realistic goals too, because when you start to look at upstream problems and going after solving those upstream problems, you won't see an immediate change, right? It's not like, turning somebody or putting somebody on a statin and watching the LDL drop. Right. So, this might mean some serious investment in the community, and then watching over time that all of a sudden cancer rates are dropping. All of a sudden our ER visits are dropping. People are having less opioid overdoses, less ER visits for asthma, as we begin to invest in that community.
Yeah. Well, I see we often use measurement. We talk differentials in terms of saying that life expectancy in Streeterville is 90. Life expectancy in North Lawndale might be 65 or 60.
Exactly. That is right.
Is that what I'm saying? Am I trying to get to be expected to live, if I live in Lawndale?
Yeah.
Is my utopian dream to be able to live as long as somebody expected to live in Streeterville?
Let me just say this to that. I mean, these are fantastic conversation, by the way. And I think we're talking about the right thing. The number 1 and 2 causes of premature mortality. Now, these are people who die before the age of 65. It's cardiometabolic disease. There's a lot in cardiometabolic disease, and cancer. Cardiometabolic disease and cancer. Half of the women who die postpartum are dying of cardiovascular disease. So the fact is, it's, people think about, the root causes, and, I call it structural violence. It's a form of violence because people, are harmed by it, and they die early as a result. So yes, we could do that in Lawndale. There's nothing inherent except the conditions that are actually, here's the good news, human made under Democrats. You didn't need Trump to create this mess. You know, we created it ourselves. But the fact is, one can have that expectation to narrow that gap. Westside United's goal is to reduce that life expectancy gap by 50% by 2030. Now, part of this is we created this thing and the pandemic got in the way. Live healthy Westside. And by focusing on the one hand, as doctors, as healthcare, we got to, when people actually have disease, we've got to sort of treat it. So no one on this call is saying don't give someone a medicine if they have a disease. But a large part of Live Healthy Westside was focusing on the common causes of premature mortality, but focus on healthy eating and active lifestyle. And imagine if we incented that, whatever that looks like. But imagine, and so we should never give up on a West Garfield Park, a West Englewood. You know, I was just down in West Englewood. I was at 63rd and Racine, and you look around and you know why people are dying early. But we should never accept this. We should never normalize this, as it's not normal, and it's not even utopian to think that you should just live. You know, so I think what are the things that we can all do together? That was the idea behind Westside United, but it's a citywide effort, obviously national as well. Like, what are the things that we could do? And how do we get our institutions, to Dr. Hampton's point, to move even more into the space, more directly into the space? Because I think that's the challenge of the time.
So one of the things too, when we talk about structural racism, I just want to put a tidbit here. When we talk about structural racism, I almost said Benny. I'm so sorry, Congressman Davis. I almost misspoke, and I was raised right. So Congressman Davis, when you think about structural violence, right, that Dr. Ansel just mentioned. When we look at, like, think about it today, it exists today, but we got to be ready for an authentic conversation, right? We just mentioned that the life expectancy in Streeterville is 90, and Lawndale we said was 65, and Inglewood it's 60, right?
Yeah.
Here's a small example of what we just did. Phase 1B. People get vaccinated when they're 65. The life expectancy
totally
Inglewood is 60. What are we doing? You know,
Dr.
so
Maya,
but
nailed it.
And then that's an example of conversations that we gotta get comfortable with having, and we have to sit with it. You know, a lot of times we like to sweep past and say, but what do we got to sit with it. And then the other thing, when Project Brotherhoods happen, when the things that Dr. Tony Hampton are doing happens, Dr. Ansel are doing, we have to realize that because these things don't look like what we've named, professional or corporate, and remember, hey, these also weren't the algorithm, whatever we're going by, wasn't by people who bear the brunt. We have to sit with it. We will sit with medical apartheid 400 years when a project that's built by our people doesn't work. We want to X that project in 2 or 3 years and say, hey, let's go back to what we're doing. It's part of our psychopathology. We have to sit with it and let it and give it time to grow. Because guess what? What Dr. Hampton is doing will meet a HEDIS measure. It will get that hemoglobin A1C down. The program has a lot of undoing. That is, you mentioned 63rd and Racine, right? On there is a corner store, a liquor store, a fast food, so things like that contribute to why you said you can look around. Yeah, that's why. There's a clinic, a great clinic, there. So that is why. So we have to take time to put money into better nutrition, sitting on that corner, better, education, sitting on corner, and those things. So
Dr. Maya, I want to riff off of your riff for a second, because that was beautiful what you said. And as part of my so as a white man who went to county like 25, met all sorts of cool people along the way, went to Sinai, worked in Lawndale, worked in that. I was about 60 when I started talking publicly about racism and its impact. And when I'm just saying, white man who, and oh, by the way, all my family was wiped out in Europe because of anti-Semitism, mass incarceration, and genocide. It wasn't like my family didn't have a lived experience. It was just, I didn't understand personally deeply enough till I got older enough that I had this unearned privilege assigned to me. So I'm just saying that. And then now when I go down to either Garfield Park, you go down to West Englewood, and my comment, I was down there with Iman, and my comment was about reparations and my thoughts on reparations. And so nobody asked what the price of scientific racism was and the cost of that. And no one asked what the cost of extracting capital out of those neighborhoods. So the other thing about the loop, if you look between 1970 and 2010, capital moved out of the west and the south side of Chicago. It was an active act of extraction, went to other parts. And then you leave neighborhoods like that, and people are now in misery. Like I said, poverty one can manage, misery you can't. And so, but no one asked, now if you want to put capital in, they say, show me, like Prophet Brotherhood, that this works. But there wasn't the demand on capital when it left. All I'm saying is, to me, when I think of reparations, we need to put, there was an estimate done on just to raise all the neighborhoods in Chicago to middle class income. I'm not talking rich. I'm not talking about over $400,000. Let's get everyone up to $50,000, $70,000, right? That's not rich, but you can go to a movie and take your wife out to dinner or your partner out to, that's okay. How much would it cost? It was $250 billion, $250 billion, just to lift up the capital investment, the kinds of stuff that people need to thrive and not be in misery. Well, we should be able to do that. That's why it's not, to me, it's not utopian to think about the solutions. But Dr. Meyer, everything you said is correct. And that narrative, we have to talk about it.
Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go on, Terry.
No, I'm going to say, David, real quickly, we have to understand that, and I was invited to talk on none of these panels about racism and all that stuff, which I refused to do because I was going to have episodes of projectile vomiting. Because we've been talking about this stuff so much, so often over my lifetime, and nothing really has happened. Nothing really has happened. Right. And so I'm not really interested to talk about it that much. The one thing I will say is that I grew up in Inglewood, and just last week we were shooting a movie, and I was over in Inglewood, and I looked at the houses. I lived at 69th and Low, and I looked at the houses. Some of them have trees growing out of them. Yeah. Okay, and we got to understand that it's not about the people, it's about the policies. When they made a policy to change steel production and move steel production to out of the United States and closed all of these steel mills that were in Indiana and South Chicago, my parents worked in some of those places along with my uncles and stuff like that. And when those things closed, those people who were paying for those houses couldn't do it. The other thing is that we had the importation of highly addictive drugs into these poorer communities that then make it seem like the people were the problem when whoever imported and maintained the supply of these highly addictive drugs like crack and everything else, and then destroyed the fabric of the family. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I won't. But you see, we got to be real clear about this, and we got to be we can't keep dancing around the edges. We got to talk about this for real. We grew food at Cook County, and we had a food RX program where we gave people bags of food using SNAP and other things. But we have the stuff we need to fix it. The issues are the policies really in place? Because there's a people who are looking at snorfing up those homes in these deserted areas, not deserted by on purpose, but deserted by intention. And I know what that community was because I lived in it. I grew up in it. I understand it. And I knew when you get hardworking people who want to do well for their families, they will if they have an opportunity. And lastly, in terms of food, our food supply has been intentionally and altered to create an addiction to the tastes that are crunchy, salty, and sweet.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so, and we also have a number of things, and our government paid and subsidized corn to the point that it was very cheap to create this highly addictive chemical called high fructose corn syrup that they put in everything. So I want to stop because I can go on, but I get worked up about this because, you know, when people ask me to come and talk, because I ain't talking about it no more. We ain't done nothing about it in 25 years. There is nothing to do but have the academics come back in, have these circular conversations over and over again with absolutely not one damn thing being done about it.
Dr. Mason, that's absolutely right. That's what I'm talking about, the psychopathology of it all. When it happens and someone calls it out, we go into the spirit of shock. Then we're going to have some research be done about it. We're going to have panels about it, and we're going to talk about it until the next thing, whether it's violence against a Black body, happens. And then we all turn our attention towards that, and we study that, you know, have a panel about that, take that apart, put it back together until the next thing. So it is the circular psychopathology of it all. And then my last comment, I want to just name, thank you, Dr. Ansel, thank you, Dr. Mason, for talking about that. Poverty is a strategic form of oppression. It's strategic. It's a form of oppression.
Yeah.
Just like passive aggression is a form of oppression. You know what I'm saying? It's strategic. You know, it puts things in place so Dr. Mason's parents can, and then, here come the drugs into the community, and you're sad because you lost your job. What are you going to do? You know, it's all strategic to inflict poverty and cause the misery that you're talking about. It's strategic. It's strategic, you know, and not without a need for accountability on the hands of the people who inflict it. That's it.
So our capitalistic orientation, I mean, we're doing some good things, but we have not been able to convince our colleagues that public sector work opportunities for disadvantaged individuals are part of what Franklin Delano Roosevelt created with the New Deal. We've taken components, but we have not been able to get 50% of the young African-American males in the city of Chicago between the ages of 18 and 30 never had a job, don't go to school, are not involved in any kind of training program, don't have access to these. And there are even jobs that do exist, but individuals need readiness skills. There are all kinds of things that people need. I mean, people need to know if you're going to have a job, you got to go there every day at 7 o'clock. I got some people work for me. They don't know you're supposed to be where you're supposed to be at a certain time every day. Or you're supposed to, I'm saying they just don't know that. Honest to goodness, they don't. I wonder sometimes. I said, damn, what is their problem?
Yeah.
They don't understand capitalism. Some gotta be wrong in terms. So it just means we got a lot of policy work to do in order to overcome some of what systemic racism and all these other things have taught us. And it's such an integral part of our public decision making.
Yeah.
It's hard to convince my colleagues that we need a jobs for youth program that the government pays for. I mean, I don't expect corporate America with their notion about financing and this and that. But we've got enough public resources that we could invest in this kind of activity and the rewards or the returns would be such that it's flowing right back into the economy. And so we're not giving anything away. It's hard. It's tough.
Yeah. So I want to go back to Terry's point. I know we're almost time. It's the policy piece of it, because this is where, you know, we know there are policies that can make a difference here. So there's portions of white America that are experiencing things in that we've seen for years in Black America and certainly Native Americans, others. So there's not just, you know, the life expectancy drops that we were seeing prior to COVID, largely non-college educated white people, particularly women, of national things. So when you oppress people enough, that affects everybody's body the same way. And so it's not, we just have to take it out. And that's where national public policy makes a difference. You know, Roosevelt did a couple things. Before he died, he realized, leading the country through the Depression and the war, World War II, he said, you know, our Constitution didn't protect us from these things. And he proposed a second Bill of Rights. And, you know, we have a Bill of Rights that's political rights, so-called rights, political rights, limited rights. But there's not, we don't really have a human rights national agenda. And certainly if you read, when you after the show, go read what Roosevelt said. Everyone should have a job that pays a wage that keeps you out of poverty. You know, and it's why people don't show up. If I don't have a chance of a job that's going to lift me out of poverty, you know, working for working's sake, I love to work. I'm a baby boomer, but you know, you're going to say having a home over your head, you know, you just go on having a right to health care. So, you know, I know, Terry, you're tired of it, but it's because but this is our work. This is our work to do. And I'm, you know, Ben, it's hard not to feel hopeless at times around this, but this has to be our work. And to me, it's human rights work. And it's as simple as that. And yes, we have to change the policy, and probably Terry won't see it in our lifetime, but we can't ever give up on it. That's what I would say. Dr. Meyer, you look like you're about to say something.
There were two things. Thank you. There were two things that, if I may say, Dr. Mason, what Dr. Mason said about kind of being tired of it. There was an article, and while the next person is talking, I'm gonna hop over to my email and try to find it where it came from this morning, where it talked about physicians of color, specifically African American physicians and increasingly male physicians. There is for lack of with all scientific terms, there's a weight that comes with every day, because not only are they fighting against it, they are seeing it done to them the most.
Yeah.
You know, and then there's an actual, so and I guess in my terms, you know, from the South Side, it's hidden different for Dr. Mason. It's hidden different for Dr. Pete. It's hidden different for me. You know, it's hidden different for Dr. Hampton. You know, so the same thing you're fighting against for the community, you know, only counselor Dr. Mason is rightfully so a doctor everywhere he goes, right? And a legend everywhere he goes, right? When he steps outside that hospital, somebody gonna hold a purse. Exactly. You know, and it hits different. You know, they might not say it because we live in a country that asks greatly that they normalize it. You know, but it's hitting them different. I say that, and excuse me for saying that, Dr. Mason. I'll put that there, and you know.
All right, Nikki, I think we've just about exhausted this time.
Thank you for inviting us, and so nice to have this conversation with everyone here.
Well, I don't know what happened. Maybe something happened to her equipment and so forth. But let me just thank all of you for a tremendous. Yeah, Nikki, go ahead.
So we've just been having a few technical difficulties here, but definitely just want to reach out and say hello to Lorenzo Brown, who is here, to Angela Underwood, who says regulate the producers. Angela Underwood also says the people are not only speaking verbally, but physically also. What are their bodies saying? Rosetta Guy says hello to everybody. Bonnie Schmetley says the same thing. Mary Ballinger says, yes, Dr. Mason. Linda Johnson has said, this is a great conversation. Yolanda Williams says, I live in Inglewood, and now the properties are high and not worth it. They are selling houses for over $300,000, and I'm scared they're going to move us out. Kay Rita says, thank you, Dr. Mason and Dr. Maya. Linda Johnson says, truth. You guys are speaking the truth. Angela Underwood says, yes, we need to educate our community. We have trending of numbers of people saying facts and truth. And Audrey Jaycock says, speak, Dr. Mason. This is real talk. There are so many comments here, and we have tons of questions here. Sandel Scott says, she talks about the rates and noise and things that are happening. Kathleen Jackson says, thank you for the wonderful conversation. And Dr. Mason, you are definitely on point. But as you know, we have reached our time. And I know you guys hate to hear me say that this is our time. But as we do on every Monday night, we're going to go around really quickly and just ask everyone to share, what is your thoughts until next Monday? Doug, what's your until next Monday?
You know, I have a glimmer of hope after this discussion. This week, they've banned the use of menthol in tobacco and tobacco-related products. And menthol is designed to suppress the harshness of tobacco and to addict you. So if this has risen to a level of consciousness after decades, there is hope that we're going to start to address these other issues raised by all the physicians on this panel. So I remain optimistic.
Wonderful. Wilbur Cook is here just as well. Dr. Tony Hampton, you're until next Monday.
I'll just use my opportunity to thank Dr. David for your work. It's just inspiring. My mom is a breast cancer survivor, and your work around breast cancer, health equity, racial disparity, we just appreciate you. Somebody has to step forward and make this happen. So I thank you for that. And I just want to echo to those listening. You said two things: cardio, metabolic disease, and cancer. And I want everybody listening to understand that 70% of all the health conditions we suffer from, diabetes, hypertension, et cetera, is metabolic disease. So, and guess what? There's no magic pill for that. It's lifestyle, it's adequate sleep, it's reduced stress, being in healthy relationships. Those are the things that will make a difference. So I want you to focus on those things while you're trying to heal. So I thank you, Dr. David, and I promise I'll do my part to join you on that mission.
Wonderful, wonderful. On the journey. Dr. Terry Mason, you're until next Monday.
Well, I want to thank Congressman Davis again for this opportunity to have this forum, and my friend David, and of course my colleagues on this panel. I get a little worked up, and I get worked up because I care. And I get worked up because it's not something that I'm talking about those people. I'm talking about my family. I'm talking about me. I'm talking about the people that I lived and grew up with. And as long as God has breath in my body, I'm going to continue saying what I'm doing. And whoever will work, wherever we can find the coalitions to make a significant change beyond just conversation, I'm there. And so I again, thank you, Congressman, for the work that you do on the House and Ways and Means Committee to make sure that there are some resources to help in these regards. And David, good luck to you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Mary Ballinger says, can't say it enough. You all are amazing, caring professionals, that we are blessed to have this privilege of your knowledge. God bless you. Dr. Maya, you're until next Monday.
I guess until next Monday, I want to just dovetail what the congressman said at the beginning. When it comes to COVID and so many other things, you can be part of the problem or you can be part of the solution. I'm thankful for all the doctors here that are asking people in so many ways, not only COVID, but racial equity, heart disease, all those things, nutrition and wellness, to be part of the solution. And thankful for everyone on here. Dr. Ansel, thank you for joining. I think I saw you last week at the Cultural Center. Thank you for joining. Thank you for everything you've done. Thank you, Dr. Pete, Dr. Hampton, Dr. Mason, Dr. Graham, Congressman. Thank you all, because there's a difference. If there is a difference, Dr. Mason is right, between talking about it and being about it. And thank you for the work you all do.
Wonderful. Dr. Pete, you're until next Monday?
Until next Monday, I'm excited, and to Dr. Graham's point, I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic. We're going to make a change. I appreciate Dr. Ansel and all of his work. I can honestly say I've always been an admirer of his and your courage. And Dr. Mason obviously is a mentor of mine. Congressman Davis, appreciate you for creating this forum for us. And don't forget, we're still in the middle of a pandemic. We got to come out of this. We will come out of this. And so as we begin to engage with patients and communities, we are seeing more vaccine hesitancy. Part of that is also systemic institutional racism that exists. We want to be able to calm our community down to say, you're going to get out of this, but you got to take my hand and let's get this vaccine done.
Absolutely. Dr. David Ansel, you're until next Monday.
Well, first, sending to my colleagues, thank you, and for the opportunity, Nikki and Congressman Davis, thank you so much. And, sending love to my brother, Terry Mason. I have not had to live this personally, but it increases my sort of obligation. And, I think we can do even better. We can do even better. And I think and we don't all have to do it together, and one of us gets tired, someone just steps up. This is our work. This is what we signed up for, in a way. Yeah. And it can get tired. So I really appreciate all of you and what you've said tonight. And, and we can do even better.
Wonderful. Well, I want our listeners to know that you're going to get the V one way or another, the vaccine or the virus. Let's be smart and get the vaccine. Let's stand up and mask up. As we ask you all the time to make sure that you do what? You wash your little hands. Make sure you watch them sing that birthday song for at least 20 seconds or more. Remember to social distance, stretch your arms out when someone is touching you or you're touching someone else. You're just a little too close. We are so close to being able to have some normalcy again. We also want to remind you guys to wear your face coverings. That's right, wear your face coverings over your nose and mouth. There are some new breaks that's coming on about them, but make sure that you have those face coverings on and read and find out what works for you. So wear those face coverings over your nose and mouth, not over your chin, not just over your mouth, but your nose and mouth. The droplets are what's important. We want to be here to be with you. Remember to join us right here next Monday, same bat time, same bat station. And of course, our closing remarks will come from the one who teaches us that health is truly wealth, our very own Congressman Danny K. Davis.
Well, let me thank all of you for being a part of a great discussion. I've got a designer face mask. Barbara Bates, the great designer who's outstanding, sent me a batch of designer face masks. And I say, right on, Barbara, and thank you. I also thank you for the money you've raised for Mount Sinai Hospital and all the gowns that you've made for young girls who want to go to proms but don't have an evening dress. And Barbara's been just making these and sending young girls off to proms in style. And so the community is so great. It's such a wonderful, wonderful place. If you have not had your shot, your vaccine, remember Sunday, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And about the holiest thing you can do is go and get vaccinated. You know, so many good things are going on until it, in spite of the pandemic, in spite of all the travail, I wake up every morning now. I can't hardly wait to get to work. I go to sleep at night thinking about what we're going to be able to do tomorrow, the next day. One of my bills is going to be marked up on Wednesday, dealing with student loan. And I'm pretty sure it's going to pass. I mean, when you got the numbers, you know, you kind of can predict the outcome. And so wonderful things are happening in spite of. But a lot of good things are happening because people are doing what they can do and what they hope to see. So thanks for a great evening. And as I always say, all of us out there listening and viewing, I end things by often saying, I am not all people, but I am one. I cannot do all things, but I can do some. That which I can do, I will do, and you should too. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See you
Thank you,
somewhere
Congressman.
on the battlefield. All right. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you very much. All right.
Dr.